All's my life I has to fight. All's my life hard times like yeah, bad trips like yeah. That's it. I'm fucked up, homie. You fucked up. But if God got us, then we gon' be alright.
Hey there, that's life. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to see you all this evening. Welcome to That's Life. If you've never been on our show, this is our Saturday show we do every single Saturday at 8 p.m. when we talk about the hot topics of the day. Please make sure that you follow, like, and subscribe to all of our channels. You can go to our Facebook page at That's Life 0320 2020. You can go to our YouTube channel at That's Life by Leah Leach, and you can follow us for updates on our Instagram page at That's Life 0320. Our sponsor this week is Coach Natasha Nedrick, which she just happens to be on our show this evening. Coach Natasha Nedrick is the owner and founder of Empowering Imprints. She is an empowerment coach who will activate faith-based entrepreneurs and professionals to unlock their purpose, monetize their gifts, and build wealth. So if you're looking for someone to help take your business to the next level, Natasha is your girl. All of her information is plugged on our ticker, so utilize her as a good resource, okay? Now, as you know, we always talk about COVID because that's an ever fluid situation that we got going on right now in the world. As of 7:30 p.m. this evening from Johns Hopkins, confirmed cases is 105 million cases confirmed. Wow, it's over that actually. Deaths right now is a little over 2 million. Please make sure that you're following the CDC and all the orders. I know that there's a lot of things trying to reopen and get back to some sense of normalcy, but please just be safe and take care of yourself at this point. So, on today's show, we are going to be talking about double standards. And this is a hot topic for me. It's a topic that sits very sensitive to me. It's going to be raw, it's going to be real, it's going to be unscripted. And I just ask you all to just be understanding, get some knowledge out of this. Even if you're knowledge and well versed, there's always something to learn in this process. And I'm super excited about the three guests I have today. Miss Tisa Joyner-Nance, Miss Jennifer Benton, and of course, Natasha Nedrick. So when we get back, we're going to kick straight off into the show. We'll be right back.
Be all right, right. We gon' be all right. We gon' be all right.
To advertise your business or product, email us at that'slife0320@gmail.com. We have affordable packaging and pricing just for you. And you can even use our ticker every Friday and Saturday for just $10 per show. Email us at that'slife0320@gmail.com for packaging, pricing, and for further details.
And as you all know, I wrote my first book, Walking on an Unpaved Road. This is the journey that I went through with breast cancer almost 4 years ago to date. Please support me in this book. You can order it directly on Amazon. You can also order it directly through me. And you can actually go to our Instagram page at Walking on an Unpaved Road. So you can check everything there. Host Leah Leach. Thank you so much for tuning in to our segment about double standards. This is going to be part of a three-part segment. Today, we're going to be talking about race, specifically black and white. Next week, we're going to be talking about gender and what that looks like. And then the next week, we're going to be talking about everything in between when it comes to double standards. So please support us in this show. It's meant to be uncomfortable. It's meant to be raw and unscripted, but it's necessary in order for us to grow, okay? My three guests, I'm going to start with Tisa, who's at the top of my right corner. Tisa, tell the guests a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hey, my sister. Good evening, everyone. I am honored to be here with you to talk about That's Life. Okay. A little bit about me. I'm a medicist. You can see by my name, but I also what can I say? Have a social media show, Tisa's Rants and Musings, that comes on every Thursday night at 9 p.m., where we rant and we muse about some of the same topics you're talking about: race, injustice, inequality, faith, and always the intersectionality of faith and the church. So I'm honored to be here. Can't wait to have this conversation.
And I'm honored to have you, Tisa. It's going to be super lit. And if you need to, definitely plug your information later on the end of the show so that people can come to your YouTube channel. So now we're going to go this way and we're going to go down to, of course, Coach Natasha Nedrick, which some of you all have seen before in our segment of Church Hurt. So, Natasha, welcome back. Tell the guests a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me back. So exciting to be here. I'm Natasha Nedrick. Like Tisa, I'm also a minister. I'm also an empowerment coach and consultant. So I work with a lot of really people who have had these ideas that God has given them for years. And all of a sudden they get to a certain point. They're like, I think I'm finally going to do that. Like, I'm ready. And not only do we talk about creating these wonderful products, we figure out how to monetize their purpose. And I also do consulting work in the area of racial justice, which we're talking about tonight. And I often work in predominantly white spaces when I do that. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
And thank you for being back with us again, Natasha. It was fun when we talked about Church Hurt. And ironically, we did implement conversations about race relations because there was a lot of things going on in the environment at that point. So
Right.
check out our segment about that because that was pretty interesting. And also our guest, Ms. Jennifer Benton. Jennifer, welcome to the show. Tell the viewers a little bit about you.
Thank you for having me. My name is Jennifer Benton. I am the CEO and founder of Genetic Marketing Group LLC, and I'm a marketing coach. I deal with churches, pastors, businesses, and I am excited about tonight's conversation. And by the way, this Queen shirt, y'all see this? This is part of my new venture called Be Free Threads. So you guys stay tuned for the release of that. It's coming real soon. But I had to rock this tonight because I'm with the Queen. So
There you go.
yes.
And we're all in support of businesses. Anything that you know about me, all my That's Life viewers know I support small businesses and I support people that are doing great things for the community. So, ladies, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm super, super happy to have all three of you on the show. All right, so we're going to kick straight off to my quote. And as you all know, I always start with a quote or a statistic from somewhere. Edmund Burke states, "Those who don't know history are destined to repeat it." The same statement was made by Winston Churchill, who said it a little bit different. Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. In order for us to discuss race issues, we have to go a little bit back in history. On history.com, from the 17th to 18th centuries, people of color were kidnapped from Africa and forced into slavery. By the 19th century, the abolition movement provoked a great debate over slavery. In the 1950s and 1960s, the civil rights movement became a mass movement protest against racial segregation and discrimination in the southern United States. Although enslaved people were emancipated and given basic civil rights, there continues to be struggles to secure federal protection of these rights. So I'm going to ask all three of my ladies a question, and everybody's going to be able to answer it in their own spin. And the idea is to be able to give different point of view and to different perspective. So I'll start with you, Jennifer. This question is for you, and this will be for you two ladies too. So think about your answer. Do you believe that the challenges that we faced during the civil rights movement continue to follow us?
Absolutely. I have seen, unfortunately, we're still seeing racism play out even today. With Donald Trump coming into office, people just felt empowered to show their racism, whereas before it was kind of hidden, it was more systematic. It was, you can't get a job because you have locks. You can't get a job because you have this or that on your record. And whether you're Black or Hispanic, we both felt it in our races when it came to competing in the job space with our beloved white people, as I call them. And so I definitely am disheartened at this point. It's 2021. But here we are, still fighting for some things that were fought back in the 60s. Okay, yeah, we have integration in the schools. Yeah, we have integration at restaurants. We don't have white only restrooms. But it might as well be, because what we're seeing, even in the digital space, which is where I'm mostly at, there are a lot of things that cater to, the white demographic. And then here we are as Black people having to create our own spaces online to serve our people because there's no regard for that. So I do feel like the struggle is very real. It has not changed. And I think it's been, 50 years since the civil rights movement? And we really haven't come as far as we thought. And that really has bothered me. So here I am fighting the good fight in my space. And, me and Natasha are great friends. When it comes to that, we're fighting together. And so I'm just hopeful that maybe this generation will pick up and learn we're all human beings. We all bleed. We all breathe. We all have a life to live, regardless of our color, regardless of where we come from. We all deserve the same rights.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, as I do know in history, there's still some places that, believe it or not, are still segregated when it comes to restaurants in certain states. And I'm not going to embarrass them and talk about them, but they know who they are. Natasha, the same question goes to you. Do you believe the challenges that we faced during the civil rights movement continue to follow us?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly do. And in certain places, I honestly believe we're worse off, and which is a hard truth to say. So there are certain things where, I mean, for the most part, blatant segregation, isn't as present. But there are certain things that, particularly as a Black community, we had during the civil rights movement, which is a lot of institutionalized organizations. So we had even the churches. Churches were central to the civil rights movement. But how many Black people go to church now? There were, universities. There are all these different movements that were central. And even with that breakdown, a lot of the things where people used to get educated, get informed, aren't there. So if we look at things as simple as housing, right? We know that while theoretically redlining should be illegal, that it is still actively in practice today, that based off of different things that they can see in your social security number and in your credit information, that you can literally, in fact, I saw this just the other day, literally talking about housing and land. Just the other day, I saw an article earlier this week where a lady was trying to buy a burial plot, but could not buy a burial plot because it was white only. And it was legally in their bylaws, right? That happened this week. And when it comes to housing, there are things that basically prevent, I mean, if I have one size house and this exact same house is in another part of town, why do they have a different property value? It has to do with who lives there. And where white people are, typically the home values are higher. It does not have to do with the quality of the home. It doesn't have to do with the residents. It has to do with skin color. And we have to have an honest conversation that a lot of the laws we fought for, including the Civil Rights Act, a lot of those things have been overturned. And so even though we won some battles, a lot of those battles have been overturned.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct. All right, Tisa, same question. Do you believe that the challenges that we faced during the civil rights movement continue to follow us now?
I do. I think if I piggyback off of what my sisters have already said, I think Minister Natasha is talking about housing, but if we look at education, if we look at then Black Wall Street, there's no longer a Black Wall Street. So something was definitely lost with integration. Something was definitely lost in the struggle for equality. We did lose something, and we're paying for it, and we're still paying for it because of the systemic racism that was prevalent back then. Voter suppression. If we didn't see that this year like never before, well, last year we I mean, it's still alive and well, where they're still doing their best to suppress Black votership and to keep us from the polls. So I think a lot of those same issues still plague us today. They just look different.
Look, I have to throw this in. Over 100 voter suppression laws have been put up to state legislators since Joe Biden won the election. Over 100 in different state
Wow.
offices. Voter suppression is real.
And it's so funny when people talk about voter suppression, and I'll kind of piggyback off of that because people think that it was just as simple as like throwing away a vote, right? Voter suppression is anything. It could be purging, which we saw plenty of that in this election. It could be that you don't have the right identification. We saw plenty of that as well too. And so I think, like you said, we have to have a real dialogue because
Rezoning.
correct,
Don't forget that. Rezoning,
correct,
pulling places out of communities, making it harder for people to get to polls.
right.
Something simple as that would had a major impact.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And I think for me, like what much of what you all said is just because it doesn't look like how it did in the 60s doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? It just evolves with time. It changes. And I think that a lot of us have to be real and have real dialogue about what that looks like. We're going
Can
to
I add something to that?
yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
I always thought on the intersectionality of church and faith, and I think one of the most disappointing things that followed us or that was revealed again to us this year and with all of the politics was that Black and white people are still serving a different Jesus. White people are still putting up crosses. They're just symbolic, putting up crosses and calling them religious ceremonies, right? So we saw so many of faith leaders that we at one time may have listened to, may have followed their ministry, be on the wrong side
Right.
of the law on this, God's law. And that for me was so disappointing because I thought at least in the faith we had overcome and came closer to being on the same side with each other. And this just revealed we're still not serving the same God.
And I'll also add to that too, Tisa. I'm not a minister, obviously, by no stretch of the imagination. I don't think I could handle that type of job, even if I could.
We're
But
all
I think that but I think it's important to talk about that element of it because there were so many churches that were silent. And we're going to talk about that towards the end because silence is a voice. Even if it's not verbalized, it's still a voice to you agreeing with something and not actually saying what it is, right? I was actually pretty proud of one of my local pastors who had a real conversation with a white Christian pastor and kind of pressed that conversation about talking about racial injustice. And I think too many times people don't want to talk about it in the church. It's that taboo topic that they kind of sweep under the rug and it doesn't exist. People are just making this up and that's just how they feel. That doesn't apply to me. And I think that more white Christian pastors need to come out and talk about that because I think that in doing so, it will actually make people come to Christ more. You'll have more people wanting to come to Christ because there's a real conversation that's happening that's not happening right now in our churches. So we definitely need to do better as Christians to not be so quick to, like you said, label the white Jesus, because I for one, that will be a whole nother topic for another day, you all, because my Jesus, doesn't look apparently like other people's Jesus, but that's neither here nor there. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to keep going on this conversation. And it's meant to be uncomfortable, people. It's meant for us to be real because the only way you can change something is if you have a real dialogue. We'll be right back.
This is America. Yeah. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now.
To advertise your business or product, email us at thatslife0320@gmail.com. We have affordable packaging and pricing just for you. And you can even use our ticker every Friday and Saturday for just $10 per show. Email us at thatslife0320@gmail.com for packaging, pricing, and for further details.
And as you all know, I wrote my first book, Walking on an Unpaved Road. This is the story of my breast cancer. You can follow us on our Instagram page at Walking on an Unpaved Road. You can also order the book directly on Amazon. The cost of the book is $20. And you can also order it through me. All of our information to plug for the book is on our status. So get all the information there. Welcome back to That's Life. I'm your host, Leah Leach. Thank you so much for joining in to our show today about race relations in America with my wonderful guest. And yes, we just happen to be proud Black women because I'm a proud Black woman. I represent, as you see my earrings, I got to represent. The queens are in the house. Tisa, Natasha, Jennifer, thank you ladies for being a part of this segment. So now I want to do a comparison and I want people to see things as they are. This is meant for you to see as a fact. This is not me bashing anybody. I just want you to hear the facts, people. The Black Lives Matter was founded in 2013 in response to the Trayvon Martin acquittal. And we don't have to talk about Trayvon Martin. We all know the case very well. The mission of Black Lives Matter is to eradicate white supremacy, build local power, to intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities by the states and vigilantes. That's directly from Black Lives Matter's website. Now, the American Freedom Party, and I'm going to read about it because I want y'all to know about it, also called the American Third Position. This is their mission statement: to represent the political interest of white Americans and to have an America that is recognizable to us, one that we could feel comfortable in. And that's directly from their webpage. If you go to, and you can also see it on Southern Poverty Law Center as well too. So now I'm going to talk about two different cases, and I'm going to read some information about both, and I want my ladies to respond to this because I want to show a comparison difference between cases and how different they are. Okay, so starting with our first one, Kyle Rittenhouse, and if you don't know that name, you're going to hear about it today. This is going to be your first time hearing about it. Kyle Rittenhouse was a 17-year-old Caucasian young man. On August 25th of 2020, he was accused of killing two people and injuring one Black person during a Black Lives Matter protest. He right now actually has fled from his home state, has jumped bail, and was arrested and had a $200,000 bond, which that's probably a drop in the bucket for him. Tamir Rice, African-American young man, 12 years old, on November 22nd, 2015, was killed by the police after allegedly being thought as a criminal with a pistol. It was later discovered that it was a toy gun. Now, another case, the differences. And I'll start with Rayshard Brooks. African-American 27-year-old young man was sitting in a Wendy's drive-through parking lot on June 12, 2020. Officers were called after Brooks was asleep in his car. They interrogated him for 40 minutes because they suspected him of a DUI. He was fatally shot and killed by police. The officers were both Caucasian and failed to render aid for more than 2 minutes. Officer Bronson faced 3 counts, including aggravated assault, and he's awaiting trial currently. Officer Rolfe faces 11 counts, including murder, but has sued the mayor of Atlanta and the interim police chief for his dismissal in the role. Now, I talked about Rayshard Brooks. This is a case that's current right now. Britt Reed, the coach of Andy Reid's son for the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you're watching the Super Bowl tomorrow, this is the coach for Kansas City. Britt Reed was 35 years old, and he was the assistant linebacker coach. He was involved in a multi-car crash, injuring 2 children on February the 4th. According to Kansas City police, they could smell a moderate odor of alcoholic beverages, and his eyes were bloodshot and red. Reed admitted to having 2 or 3 drinks and a pill called Adderall. Reed complained of a stomach ache and was transported to the hospital. He has a record, and his record is interesting. January 30th, 2007, he was arrested for pointing a gun at another driver on a road rage incident. 7 months later, he was arrested and charged with DUI. Because of the second charge, his bail was revoked and he received a sentence of 1 to 6 months. I know y'all heard me. 1 to 6 months. And he received time credit because he had already gone to jail before. So he went to jail from February the 1st, 2008, and was released February 7th of 2008. He paid a $10,000 fine and was ordered to a drug rehab program. Now, why did I read all that, ladies? Because I want people to see the comparison between black and white in America. So, my question to the four of you all, ladies, is between those four cases, which one angers you the most and why? So, I'll start with you, Tisa.
All of them
Mm,
are infuriating. But I think what angers me the most would be red rape because children were involved. The innocent people lives were put at stake. Um, and he already was well known to have an issue. His 6 months, and let me just contextualize this with I used to be a New York City probation officer. So, and law enforcement is my background. So I had kids do 5 years probation for stealing Pokemon cards from another kid. Now, of course, they call it stealing when that kid just, you grew up, bully took your stuff, but it rendered 5 years probation. I've had to send kids to drug treatment for smoking weed. There was drug treatment for months on end, part of their probation sentence for smoking weed. So this for me is just another blatant example of what we call white privilege, especially for males. White males have historically been allowed to be privileged more than any other. They historically have allowed to be aberrant and mediocre at best, and get away with it and be okay with it and still reap the best benefits this life can offer. So for me, I think it's disgraceful, and it should be protested just around that. The whole team. If he even shows up on the sideline, I'm gonna have a boycott going on my page. Like, what we doing? I just hope, I'm gonna leave it there because that for me would have had a black man or black woman, no less. The minute the cops arrived, it would have escalated and we would have been incarcerated and it would have been ugly.
absolutely. Natasha, I'm going to hand it to you. Which one of the four infuriates you the most?
I have to go with Tamar Rice. I have to do because 12-year-old kid. I still have this visual like stuck in my head. Like the car barely stopped.
Right.
Right, the car barely stopped, and the police officer had already shot him. It's a kid in a park. There was a child in a park, but our kids aren't valued as children, right? And like there is an inherent danger that people see in blackness, and so when you realize that, like, I don't even think the other cop even got fully outside of the car. Like it happened so quickly. There wasn't any, and then you can compare these other things where you have people again storming the Capitol, like with weapons that are very visible. Like it's not even a question about it. And I remember there's one guy in the Capitol, and he's like, this room is very, very sacred. If you could just please, if you don't mind. And they use every skill to de-escalate. Every last one of them. But when it comes to our children, 12 years old,
Yeah,
like
it's a rough one.
The baby looked like a kid. This wasn't a baby who looked grown.
Right.
This was an obvious child, and to take a child's life, without any regard for de-escalating, without any, there was nothing to de-escalate. Like it was a toy gun, but you couldn't even get the facts. And the fact that there was still yet no justice for this case, right? to this day, there's no justice. Like, and they'll give you they'll give you money, but that money doesn't. Why aren't these people arrested when they make these charges? But the laws prevent people from even being able to serve out time for the crimes they commit against us. And that whole thing is infuriating. But all of them are infuriating. But like Tamar Rice for me is the most infuriating.
I think I want to change my answer.
Listen,
They're all so infuriating.
It's meant to be a hot topic, people. Jennifer, what you think?
Definitely all of them are infuriating, but Tamir Rice that hit home because I'm from the Cleveland area. And all I could think of was, what if that was one of my nephews? What if that was one of my little cousins? Because I have family that live in that particular neighborhood. And it's like, and they play at the park that he plays at. So, of course, when that happened, I was living in Atlanta, and I'm calling like, don't go to the park. Just play in the backyard, because I don't get it. How do you shoot a kid and then go home and sleep at night, knowing that you took away somebody else's son? And then I don't know if the police officer is a father himself, but still, surely he has little cousins, nieces, nephews around that age. You took away someone else's son. You took away someone else's grandson, niece, nephew. Like, come on. And the lack of sympathy, and some of the reactions, even not to dip back to Trayvon, but in my community, the reaction to Tamir, Trayvon was like, well, if he would have just,
Right.
no, there is no if he would have just.
Well,
Right.
he was playing. He was
He was
doing
a baby.
literally what he was supposed to be doing at that age.
Right. But see, the lighter persuasion seems to think that, well, if you just comply with the officers, nothing will happen to you. No, nothing will happen to you because you look like them.
Whether you comply or not.
What time was there to comply?
Right.
What time?
Right.
Let's even throw that out. There was no time to comply. You literally jumped out the car and shot a kid. Mm-hmm. And so let's throw out all these excuses that they give. If they would have complied, well, we can't use that excuse even here.
Right. He wasn't even given time to comply. He didn't even know he needed to comply to anything. And that's what angers me the most. And I look at it like, you know what? I have to teach my kids. I experienced racism at 6 years old. 6. So now I'm like, I had this dream. I had the dream, Martin Luther King dream. I don't have to teach my kids racism. Yes. They don't have to know about how to protect themselves. They don't even have to know what it looks like. And then here I am. My girls are 9 and 7, and I have to teach them. Listen, if this person says this to you, that's racism. They do this to you, they treat you different than white kids in your class, that's racism. You have to teach our kids how to protect themselves. And that's so unfortunate. My heart goes out to Tamir Rice's mother every single day, because I just couldn't. She's better than me. Because you think about it, as a common person, if you kill somebody, you're going to jail. Yet these officers, they kill, they choke, they do all this stuff, and they get fired,
and rehired.
In another state or another county.
I was going to say, may be able to live in the same home, just drive 15 minutes down the street.
And let's just be clear, like especially in cases like, and I'll start with Trayvon, and the Trayvon Martin case. And I tell people this all the time: a guilty conscience will eat you up, right? It is no coincidence that Mr. Zimmerman has been in trouble with the law several times thereafter that case, because a guilty conscience follows you everywhere you go. Everything you do follows you everywhere you go. Like you all, I'm a mother. I'm a mother to a almost 14-year-old and almost 12-year-old. As a mother, the fear of my children just being able to go to the mailbox and come back, the fear of them going outside in the backyard, even though we're in a secured area, somebody just popping off and going crazy. That is a real fear that all mothers feel. You feel, even if you're not a mother, you still feel that. You feel that cringe of like, somebody that's that age that will go out there and go do that. And so all of them burn me wrong. the Tamir Rice one burns me in a way that it takes a part of me, because as a mother, when Trayvon Martin died, when Michael Brown died, all these young men died. I felt that I felt that gut wrench of that scream of you're seeing your baby on the ground and nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to put in effort. Nobody cared about his life at that moment. And so it definitely cuts at a different type of cloth for me. I also struggle with the fact that Andy Reid's son, and I'm going to talk about Mr. Britt Reid, you have a whole record, not just one thing, because the one thing was pretty bad, which you pulling out a gun during a whole road raging. That was pretty bad. But then you have a DUI. You have a whole DUI behind that. And you are still not only driving, not only coaching as an assistant coach for your father's football team. So, because that's kind of convenient too, but you're alive to be able to go to a drug rehab control program and to be able to get your life right. But Rayshard Brooks didn't have that opportunity, and he was accused. Let's be real. He wasn't, there was no proof that he couldn't pass the sobriety test. They say that there was proof, but there wasn't any real proof that he couldn't pass the sobriety test. But he wasn't
doing something to not be a DUI.
Correct.
I'm trying to understand, if the man was asleep, why didn't someone just say, okay, obviously you're a little tired. How about we just look, I got you an Uber. Like this is how simple it could be. Let me give you an Uber. Let me give you a ride. That is as simple as it could be. And I know of cases where when there were white people, white young boys, they would have been, I know of officers that have taken them to get food because they were high. You know what you need? You need some food in your stomach, right? And so you go beyond to make sure that you just see these are kids that are just being kids, or these are young men being young men. But we aren't afforded those opportunities to even mess up, right? To fall asleep like falling asleep at Wendy's should not mean that you have to die. Like, I don't care if he had alcohol in his system, that still is no reason he should have died. Point blank, period.
I look at the fact too, Tasha, to add to that is all of us have a bad day, right? No, like, listen, there are moments where I just sit in my car and I just have to decompress, right? I should be able to do that. I should be able to sit in my car, no matter where I am. If I'm at a gas station, if I'm at a parking lot, if I'm at my own house, I should be able to sit in my car and not have the threat of worrying about, is someone going to approach my vehicle? Do you understand what I'm saying? And so for me, the frustration becomes, why are we so quick to escalate?
Right.
If a person that doesn't look like exactly like me, why are we so quick to escalate to hurt a person? Right. But when the person looks just like me,
right,
I don't escalate. I do as a matter of fact, let's talk about the young man who shot up the church in Charleston, South Carolina, who they took to Burger King.
Burger King. We know you murdered folks, but you hungry.
But when the guy who was in the Capitol walking away with the podium, they ordered him to have organic food because he only eats organic food.
I mean, it's not that I want what bad things that happen to Black people to happen to white people. We just want to be afforded the same privilege to live.
Right.
That is, I mean, we just want the same privilege to be able to be looked at as human beings, being looked at as this person's having a bad day, perhaps, or just being able to be looked at and to be given the benefit of the doubt. Like, having an encounter with a police officer should never be a death sentence. Like, period. It just shouldn't. And if nurses can figure out how to de-escalate people, mental patients, right? Like, I saw a post earlier today and it said, I have seen McDonald's employees de-escalate situations better than police. Why is that? Someone said, because we'll be fired if we don't. That is the difference. That if you work at McDonald's or if you are a nurse and you harm another individual, they don't care how small the damage is, you're being fired. and you're going to be held accountable. But there's no accountability, which means we know our lives are at risk every day. Like our actions are different. Like I have to think about what time is it before I leave the house? Can I go in certain areas? Could I we literally, our minds are always going about what is safe for us to do. And even in all of that, we can do every little safety protocol and it doesn't matter because people have been killed in their homes and people say, well, I thought it wasn't my house.
Breonna Taylor in a bed sleeping.
Jogging in their neighborhood. People have been, it does every regular aspect of life. We have documented evidence and videotaped evidence that it doesn't matter, right? And so we really need change. And when we talk about the double standard, why is it that only Black people seem to be advocating for the change? Why is it that there are other white people who know that it's an unjust system who are like, well, that's just not right. It's just not right. If you can say to yourself, would you ever want to switch places with a Black person? And your indication would be no, then why aren't you actively advocating to change the system?
And I guess my conclusion to that part of it, Natasha, is just the reality of it is that how many people would change places? You know what I mean? If you have to hesitate to think, yeah, I would change places with my neighbor who doesn't look like me. If you have to hesitate to find the answer, that's probably, you know that there's something wrong. And I'm going to talk to Jennifer because I think for me, as moms, I don't know if you've had this experience. We were in a car recently, my wife and I were in a car recently, and a police officer pulled behind us, not because of anything, but just to be behind us. And my son immediately, like it was immediate, had a freak out moment because he understands that the police, even though they're supposed to protect, he understands at 12, or I'm sorry, at 13 at the time, 13, that they're a threat. Do you think that your kids understand that and can conceptualize that and what that looks like? Or is that a fear for them? Is that a real fear for them?
It is. Anytime a police car comes by us, near us, my oldest, she will check on her sister and say, "Look, make sure your seatbelt's on. You don't want mommy getting in trouble with the police." And it hurts my heart to hear her say that. She's 9, but she's heard my mom, say, I don't want to get pulled over. She's heard me say, I don't want to get pulled over. You guys behave. And it's almost like, when will it be over? When will we be able to drive down the street and be free and not fear for our lives if we get pulled over? Because even with, and I hate to go there, even the Black cops, they get on these power trips too. So there has to be some level of unity to say, you know what? I'm an officer. I'm African American. At least you're safe with me. There has to be some level of unity because our people are getting killed for dumb reasons at an alarming rate. And I'm tired of it. Just a quick story. I have a racist neighbor who cannot stand the fact that he lives between 2 Black families and we just happen to be cousins. And so this man, I have him on video. I have a white landscaper that does my yard. He's out there doing my yard, mowing my lawn, peacefully. I'm in the house working. And then all of a sudden I hear all this yelling. I went with my phone. Thank God I grabbed my phone. Something said, go out the front door, not the back door. So I went out the front, creeped around. This man was in my yard. I caught him on video. I hit record as soon as I came off my front steps. I had just gotten a survey done. I inherited my mom's house. Just gotten a survey done to prove, because he had dug up my yard, claiming that it was his, expecting me not to defend the land that we've owned for 20 years. So he got mad when I proved that he did not have any land on the west side of his house. And he had to take up all that stuff that he put down. But he continued to cross over into my yard. And so I called the police and, they came through. He had threatened me, my landscaper. because my landscaper stood by me and he felt like, well, it should be white brotherhood. Why are you standing by her? She's just a ninja. And the officers did not arrest him. Now, had I went on his porch with his no trespassing sign on it and caused the same ruckus that he caused on my lawn, best believe I would have been handcuffed. Best believe it. So that double standard, they gave me a piece of paper. Well, ma'am, you can write a report if you want to. And I showed you the video while you're here. In fact, I showed you 2 videos because I recorded myself telling him to take his junk off of my yard. And he's cussing me out. So I gave you history and I gave you proof of what happened the day that I called you, and you have refused to arrest this man. And what makes it worse, he's a veteran, somebody that supposedly went into the Army to protect. So of course he pulls that card. Well, I'm a United States veteran. Well, then you should know better.
And if anybody would know better, it would be you.
Yes. But it's that good old boy system. So as a Black woman, frustrated.
Well, I'm glad that nothing happened to you. And I'm glad that you are safe despite the circumstance, because at the end of the day, it's about you being safe. And just know that you have a sisterhood of women on this call now that's going to always have your back. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to end with some tips and some things that you can do in terms of just helping the racial divide that we've got going on. We'll be right back.
To advertise your business or product, email us at thatslife0320@gmail.com. We have affordable packaging and pricing just for you. And you can even use our ticker every Friday and Saturday for just $10 per show. Email us at thatslife0320@gmail.com for packaging, pricing, and for further details.
And as you all know, I wrote my first book, Walking on an Unpaved Road. This is the journey of my breast cancer. You can order this book directly on Amazon. You can also order this book directly through me on Instagram at Walking on an Unpaved Road. And check out all the updates that we got going on for our book. Thank you so much for your support. Welcome back to our show, That's Life. I'm your host, Leah Leach. Thank you so much for tuning in to our segment about double standards, Black versus white. This is a heavy topic, and unfortunately, I couldn't even cover just all the questions we had because there's no way to talk about a topic like this and get it all in an hour. It's just not possible. This has been years of systemic issues that we've had. And it's going to take a lot more than just one show to talk about it. But I'm glad we had at least this show to at least start the ball rolling, having real dialogue about it. So I know this is going to sound goofy to you all, but I found this website. And I think the intention was good, but I like some of the tips on there. So we're going to work with this tips on how to work with this situation. So 7 strategies. This is the topic. And y'all, don't laugh at the subject line on this thing, but 7 strategies to help you on your anti-racism journey. Lord help these people that write these articles because they need help with the subject line. But anyway, from verywellmind.com, the first one, acknowledge modern day racism. I agree with that. I think that in order for you to change something, you got to acknowledge it. You're not going to be able to get past it if you don't acknowledge it. Racism, no matter what it looks like, whether it was in the 50s and the 60s, it still exists. You just heard Jennifer's story. It still lively exists. Number 2, recognize your own prejudice. Yeah, some people don't even know that they're prejudiced. They think that this is a lot of normalcy behind that. And I think that unfortunately, there's some people who do genuinely know that something's wrong with them. They're a little But some people genuinely don't know because they've been brought into an environment and into a culture, and they don't recognize that they have this particular prejudice. Number three, take a test to identify your biases. Maybe, but you know what your biases are. Most people do. I know what my biases are. I can speak for me. But take a test. That's what they say. Number four, learn about yourself. And I'm going to throw this one to you, Tisa. How important is it to know who you are and to know culturally who you are when you're facing somebody who is racist?
I mean, it's critical. I think part of knowing who you are is also um, understanding what you're working with when you're dealing with someone who is a racist. And, racist has been co opted. The word itself has been co opted. So we've had to upgrade our language and try different methods to help people, such as anti-racism journeys, to disarm them enough to even be able to hear how their behavior is landing for us. But I think it can be so triggering. All of what we've talked about, and you can do a whole show on communal trauma of the Black community. You could do a whole show and not even cover enough to talk about what Jennifer talked about, what we've been talking about, and how it impacts us not just individually. I don't know Tamir Rice's mother, but I am impacted and traumatized by what happened. So I think and this is my thing now, I'm worried about me. I don't care about you now. Back in the day, civil rights, we were trying to educate them and trying to help bring them along. Now I'm trying to deal with my trauma from your behavior. And I'm trying to recognize who I am, understand my own internalized depression, so I can be able to be stronger and empower my community. I don't have time now for I just don't. At least, and let me contextualize that for those who don't want to listen and truly learn. Right? If you're really open, then yeah, we can have dialogue. But if you really just want to, defend your behavior, your white supremacy, your implicit bias, and I think that's why they say take a test because there's so much bias that you don't even know you have. That kind of test can help reveal for you, because most racists will never say they're racist. So how do you get them to really recognize it? But to your question, you got to know who you are, and that starts with focusing on you and focusing on how all of this is impacting you.
Definitely, definitely. The next one, I'm going to toss it to you, Miss Jennifer, is learn about other people. And I think that that is critical, especially with Caucasian people. And I'm going to talk specifically to them.
Yeah.
They don't know us.
We know all about them.
Correct. They have a prejudged preconception of who we are. How important is it for other cultures to learn about other people?
It's extremely important. And I'll say this, I come from a multiracial family. So I was born into a family that uh, started out Black, Native American. I got a couple of white pieces in the heritage line, but have some Italians in my family. I've got some Asians in my family. I've got Hispanics in my family. And so I had cousins of all different races. And when I got older, I realized the world is not as agreeable as my family. And so we had a situation, and I laugh about it to this day. Um, One of my relatives, they got married to a Caucasian lady, and she came from a very sheltered situation. And so when they met my relative, he had on a leather jacket, and they automatically thought he was a drug dealer because he had a pager. They didn't think to ask, well, what do you do? Are you a doctor? Because at that time, back in the 90s, doctors also had pagers. Nurses also had pagers, which he was a nurse. So when they found that out, they're like, oh, we didn't know. There was no I'm sorry. So found out, he's got a mom and a sister, and the mom's a single mom. Automatically assume, oh, they must live in the ghetto, they must live in the hood, da, da, da. So we had a combined Christmas one time, and her family came and our family got together, and we got together at the mom and the sister's house. And the lady's family was like, this isn't the hood. This is looks like our neighborhood. Well, yeah, because our family has always lived on this side of town. My grandfather owned real estate on the white side of town. We built relationships, business relationships with white people. So, learning the fact that not all African Americans come from the same neighborhood. Not all African Americans are poor. There are those of us that understand generational wealth. There are those of us that understand having real estate and property. Just take that time to know who we are and stop watching the television so much.
Stop watching the television.
Stop watching cops and whatever else. I'm just gonna flip the BET and find out who black people are. You're gonna find out some of the most ratchet versions of us on BET and VH1.
Correct. And First 48, because I'm tired of them. I'm tired of First 48.
Right. You're not going to see an educated version of us on those networks. So if you have black friends at work and at church and things like that, first of all, don't be weird. Let's be very clear. Don't be strange. We just want to find out who black people are. No. Genuinely treat them like the human being that they are. The only difference is hair, skin color. That's it. Treat them like you would want to be treated. And I promise you, you're going to find yourself having more in common than you have in difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. The next one's to you, Tasha. And I'll start with this one a little bit. Interact with people of different races. Now, let me speak for my family, our family. We are very colorful. My whole family, my whole entire family. Just in my immediate bloodline, I have 3 siblings that are mixed with white and black, just in my bloodline. Then I have cousins that are dark as me, darker than me. I have cousins that are fair skinned, that literally look like and we're literally the same bloodline. When it comes to interacting with people of different races, Tasha, what are some do's and don'ts that you should never do and that you should do when you meet other people of other races?
Well, there's so many. I think you just got to kill all assumptions first. A lot of times we have a lot of these assumptions. I will say this: if you meet somebody who looks like they're from a particular place, do not open up. So, where are you from? That is not a good opening statement. That is just considered rude. How about their name? How are you? Just because you're curious doesn't mean that should dictate the conversation. I'll give you a simple story, though, about assumptions. So I grew up, I was raised basically in Texas. My mom is very, very fair-skinned. So fair-skinned that I've had people argue with me that she's not my mother, which I thought I would know about.
Jeez.
I remember being on the volleyball team. They're like, that's not your mom. I was like, yes, it is. You're like, I didn't know you're biracial. I was like, I'm not. And so my mom's very fair skinned. My dad is dark. And at one point, my mom really liked having blonde hair while we were in Texas. And so we were at a restaurant and people would assume my mom was Mexican when she had this blonde hair. And so people would just go up to her starting to speak Spanish. And the funny thing is my dad's from Costa Rica. So he would respond and they'd be freaked out because my mom's looking at her like, she doesn't know Spanish. She's black and grew up in New Jersey. And my dad is responding in Spanish because they don't know black people can actually know Spanish because the slave triangle also went down. And so the assumptions that people make about us just because they don't know. So don't start off with assumptions. Start off, and especially negative assumptions, kill stereotypes. Have open conversations with people. Try to push back past the things that are a little bit uncomfortable, because a lot of times, even when you meet people who are different and you think they maybe are the exception to the rule, you don't actually get to know about their history. You start having conversations about work, or you have conversations about kind of the kind of mindless stuff. But once you're developing relationships with people, go deeper. Go deeper so you can really understand who someone is, because those superficial those things you see on VH1, BET, Cops, like that really doesn't give you the full spectrum of who we are, particularly when media, even when watching the local news, like that's not going to give you who we are. And we're not monolithic. So like there's not like one scale of black people. And so you really not just need to get to know me and get to know Tisa and get to know Jennifer and get to know Leah. Like you have to get to know people, a variety of different people, and you still won't get the full black experience because we're all different.
Can I just say how sad, though? It still makes me sad that we have to say these things. Let me just put that there. Because when you see ratchet white people on the TV, you don't sit there and you know that that doesn't represent the whole spectrum of your race. But you see a few, it just so frustrating to me.
It's the same thing. And I'll tell you, Tisa, my experience with what that looks like. Natasha and I, it's funny when people say, y'all are Spanish? You have Spanish blood? Yeah, we do. And you will never believe how many times I hear, is your mom Mexican? Is your mom Puerto Rican? As if that's the only two Spanish cultures that there are in the country, in the world. But does your mom look like you? Yeah, she looks literally just like me. And she speaks fluent Spanish, just like any other Spanish person that's in Costa Rica. And she also speaks very great English as well. Those are still dialogue conversations that we have. And it's unfortunate that, yes, we still having them, but it's necessary to have them because in order for things to change, and change doesn't always just happen overnight. It doesn't. Okay. We've been talking, we just had a whole segment about what it looked like. It started early before the 18th century.
Yeah. And we've been having those conversations since then.
And we're still having real dialogue conversation about it. So that's the bottom line. So number 7, and this is the last one, and I thought this was an interesting one, enroll in a course. Now, hey, I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. If enrolling in a course about how to not be a racist is going to help you not be a racist, I'm all for it. I don't know where. If y'all know some plugs, y'all can give them out. I don't know any place. I don't know any place. But those were the tips. Some of those tips were very practical tips, though. Acknowledge that racism exists. The only way it's going to change is if we acknowledge it. Learning other cultures, learning people and who they are. Because I'm more than just my skin, right? I'm more than just this brown girl that you see in front of you. I'm a mother. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a manager. I have many multi-hats. So learning about me beyond the skin that I'm in. Ladies, thank you so much for being a part of this show. I know we couldn't cover it all. There's no way to cover it at all. And we are going to have more conversation about race because that is life and that is a part of life. But unfortunately, it's a part of life that we can do something different about. So we're going to have much more conversation about race, but it's going to be further down the line when we have some more shows about it. So I want each of you all to tell people where to follow you if you have an Instagram, if you have a Facebook, if you have a Clubhouse, which some of y'all probably got Clubhouse. Oh, and we even had somebody who just said something. I'm going to acknowledge this real quick before we go to all that stuff. Miss Leslie says, wait a minute. I don't know there's courses that exist. And if they do, it definitely depends on who's teaching. Mm-hmm. So that's a whole nother conversation. Because who is teaching the course of racism, anti-racism? So good point, Leslie. I just wanted to throw that out there because that was an excellent point. So anyway.
There's a good course. I could just tell you one. It's called Undoing. It actually is called Undoing Racism. You can probably Google it. And it's an organization that goes around to different organizations and they have these whole sessions. My organization did it. And I know, Natasha, you're doing some of that training in white spaces. So there's a lot more training that's out there, which for me is better. At least you're making that effort.
Correct.
Get educated than expecting me to educate you. I just can't do it anymore. But if you want to do it, go. There's places to learn. So Yeah, there's a lot out there now. Diversity and inclusion courses. Yeah.
There's a whole there's basically no excuses, is I think what we're trying
Correct.
to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not nan one excuse. There's
Thank
even courses for you today.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would say to those that are watching that are Caucasian, if you are woke, so to speak, like the phrases that your people use to avoid talking about racism, to downplay racism, it is your responsibility to educate. I had a lady chime in on my thread the other day when I was talking about racism in the church, and she broke it down. We were talking about celebrating Black history in the church, and a couple of pastors that were Caucasian said, well, we're just going to preach the gospel and we're just going to worship God because celebrating Black History Month is divisive and it's not of the kingdom of God. And
I'm sure they say that every 4th of July.
Right. And every Memorial Day.
Or 9/11.
Right. But she broke that thing down. She said, when you say worship God and the conversation is revolving around Black people and justice for them, this is what it means. And when you say preach the gospel, this is what that means. It means I want to avoid the topic because I don't feel comfortable discussing it. And it makes me uncomfortable because I secretly have race. I mean, she went to town. I said, go ahead. Thank you. Thank you. Because they needed to see a lighter face than mine and the others actually coming. And she said, I was raised in a white supremacist church. I know the phrases that infiltrate our churches. And it sounds innocent, but it's nothing but. She's like, it's just like saying all lives matter when there's Black Lives Matter. You don't go to a Susan Komen breast cancer rally with all cancer matters signs and shirts on.
Yeah, right.
Certainly don't.
We know all cancer matters, but breast cancer is killing a lot of people.
And let me tell you something. And I'm one that's you're going to hear me say this. Okay, and I'm not gonna cuss because I love Jesus. I'm gonna do right tonight. All lives cannot matter
if Black lives.
If every life doesn't matter,
right?
And our lives don't matter because they don't. So all lives cannot matter. And I'm gonna talk about mine. If my life, doesn't matter. That's a fact. Okay, look, we're gonna end this thing. Tisa, tell the people where they can find you.
They can find me at tjnanceministries.com on IG, same location. I also have a boutique for women on the healing journey where you can get paraphernalia and hashtag healing is the only agenda, because if you don't heal, then it's going to usurp everything else you do. And brokenness is too expensive. So you can go to www.healingistheonlyagenda.net and see some products, especially coming up to Valentine's Day, ladies. Don't be home depressed. Luxuriate on yourself. Love yourself. Get into some self-care. I'm bringing the baths back, okay? And be okay with your healing journey.
I love it. I love it. Tasha, tell the people where they can find you.
Well, you can easily find me following Natasha Nedrick, like at Natasha Nedrick, Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse. And I also want to plug, because next week you're going to be talking about those boundaries when it comes to sexuality. I also do this Bible study every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. And so you can go to the Instagram page, get the link, jump in there, because we are going there and having a conversation about gender and sexuality. And Leah, we go there.
Listen, let me tell you something, y'all. If y'all want a cool thing to do on Saturday morning, get lit with empowerment, because I'm telling you, we get lit. And yes, we talk about Jesus. Yes, we talk about Jesus, because listen, if it wasn't for Jesus, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. That's just my truth. That's just my reality. But we get real, and I think that until we get real and we get past that part, we're gonna keep struggling. So y'all better join us in Bible study next Saturday at 10, because I'm gonna be there. I was late today, but I'm gonna be there on time.
She was 2 minutes late, y'all.
I was 2 minutes late. And bless my heart, because I'm always on time. Okay, because I'm militant. I'm about my time. I gotta stay on time. So yes, check that out for sure. Okay, Jennifer, tell the people where they can find you, baby.
Well, you guys can find me here on Facebook under Jennifer Benton. And also I'm on Clubhouse and Instagram and Twitter as Janelle, JenJanell. And I'm having conversations all this month in regards to race relations in the church. We covered some surface topics last week, had a great conversation. The response was beautiful, but we're coming back with some deeper conversations because guess what? It ain't over. It is not over at all. And until we see some things change, there's some talking we have to do, but there's also some decisions that we have to make. And I'm looking forward to having the conversation. So feel free to join me on Clubhouse and on Instagram.
Definitely. Well, thank you, ladies, for being a part of it. So I'm going to end with three things. So the first thing is I'm going to say Happy Black History Month, even though my history is all year round. I don't have to just do it in February. So that's the first part. And I'm going to read my quote and Bible verse of the day. Desmond Tutu said, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor."
Bottom line.
Maya Angelou says, "Prejudice is a burden that confuses the past, threatens the future, and renders the present accessible." So remember that too. Our Bible verse of the evening is Romans 12:9-10. "Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another. Honor one another above yourselves." Okay. I hope you learned something. I hope to see you next Saturday. Thank you, ladies, for being a part of this segment. Until the next time, we'll see you later, guys. Bye, everybody.